Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tapper, can you see the timer?
I can.
Okay, and just a note to our participants, this workshop session is 45 minutes. The green timer display will come up at 35 minutes, the amber at 40 minutes, and the red at 45 minutes. At 50 minutes, we will open up and allow for questions to Toastmaster Tapper. It's all yours.
Thank you, DTM Michelle Washington. Dignitaries, distinguished Toastmasters, and fellow Toastmasters, and any welcome guests. Thank you for being here today. The first thing I want to share with you is I want you to loosen up. Life is tough enough as it is, so let's just loosen up. Let me start out by talking about my moniker, the Speaking Sax. That's because I am the baddest jazz saxophonist, motivational speaker that lives at my house. Now, some of you may have heard me at the last event. I played then, and you saw me play this. This is a soprano sax. It's a little sax. Folks, there's nothing wrong with a little sax every now and then, as long as you use it with moderation. At the end of the program, I'm going to share with you the scorecard for the upcoming contest for humorous speech. And I'll post that in the link in the chat. But right now, we're going to talk about writing a humorous speech. Have you ever been on stage and told a joke and nobody laughed? Everybody's looking at you like deer in the headlights. Your sphincter muscle is doing like this. It's a horrible feeling. I've been there. So hopefully at the end of this workshop, none of you will have that experience ever again. The first tip I want to give you is know your audience. I was invited to speak at a naturist group, a convention, and I had all my material ready. I had, humorous information for tree hugging, eating tofu, walking barefoot in the forest. And then I get on stage only to find out that naturist is another name for nudist. I'm looking at the audience and nobody's dressed. To make matters worse, the guy on the front row said, "Sir, your fly is open." I'm like, what? Know your audience. All the demographics, young, poor, rich, male, female, ethnicity, as much as you can find out about your audience. Usually it's the meeting planner, the person that hired you for the engagement. Get that information from them, but we have Google. You know what the group is, so Google as much as you can about that group. Then you can select a topic that's related to that group, because you're going to prepare your speech for that group. You may have a set speech, but you're going to tailor it and adapt it to that group. What I do is I use challenges from my life that I think might relate to that group. So find challenges that you've been through that you can talk about and relate it to the group. Try not to offend, but you will. Folks, you're not going to please everybody. And there are people that get up every day just looking to be offended. Don't worry about them. Do the best you can. But my golden rule is I don't try to intentionally offend anyone. I don't want to target anyone with an insult or anything like that. So try not to offend. Now, another tip is, where do you find material? I get asked this a lot by clients. Tapper, where do you find material? Okay, as some of you, I live in South Florida. Folks, material writes itself here in South Florida. So what I do, I keep a journal. Keep a journal with you in your pocket. I keep mine on my phone, and things happen all the time. Watch the news in South Florida. Material unfolds just constantly. Grab something, write it down, and see how you can apply that to something in the future. I have a whole list of material that I can refer back to whenever I have to prepare a speech. And trust me, I'll steal a joke in a minute. I don't worry about plagiarism. I'm not doing stand-up comedy. I'm not getting paid to do comedy, but I will steal a joke in a minute. If I'm in the restaurant and I hear somebody at the next table laughing, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm leaning over there, getting nosy, trying to find out what it is they're laughing about. Because if they're laughing, I can steal that and I can share it with somebody else and I can make them laugh. So be aware of your surroundings, super aware. As you're driving to work, no longer do you drive to work in that state of hypnosis. You've got to wake up, look around. Look at that. Look at that. Material is everywhere, folks, everywhere. Now, there's things in your life that you can use as material. What I recommend is the more painful it is, the better opportunity it is for a laugh. Think about it, realistically. Look back in your life and there may be some events that you've been through that were painful, but now you can look back and laugh at it. As kids, we used to bite holes in our tongues when somebody would hurt themselves, slip and fall or whatever. We're trying not to laugh because you know if you laugh, you're gonna get in trouble. So we'd bite our tongue. I saw a lady in church. She was in a rush to get out of church, whatever. And this church, this was my first time visiting, and they had a sliding glass door that opened. So she was in a hurry to get out, and she ran right into the window next to the door. She thought it was going to open, but she missed the door. She hit the window, and it was like this. And that's what I saw. It looked like a cartoon that I saw on TV. Her face was plastered up against the window. And the first thing you do, you find out, are you okay? Then when they're okay, man, I just turned around and I just started busting up. So things that are painful, they are funny, as long as nobody got hurt. And in your past, things that are painful, you can look back at it now. And you can laugh at it. You got to learn to laugh at yourself. I have pain in my past, the challenges. I grew up as a product of a biracial couple. Yeah, I used to be black. Now, some of you don't believe, but let me show you. I used to be black. You see, that was me when I had hair. And I grew up with a lot of struggles. I have to say the N-word now. I cannot use the word. I've been reprimanded. But I used to be able to say it. And I got called names from both sides, you know, and I grew up in the times of riots back in the 60s. And I remember a friend of mine in junior high school, he asked me, Tapper, what side are you going to fight on? I said, are you crazy? Whoever's winning, I'm about surviving. But there's a lot of things that you can dig up in your past that now you can look back and laugh at. As long as it's not a serious tragedy, but something that's painful. When you heard a comedian, for example, if they told a joke and it was painful for them, you said, oh man, you know, you're pointing at them and you're saying, oh, I know that hurt. Think of the cartoons of the past, the Three Stooges. All their comedy was beating each other up, smashing each other on the head. The Roadrunner. How many times did an anvil fall on the head of Wile E. Coyote? Smashed him to a pancake. Because pain is funny, as long as it's someone else's pain. So use your pain and make that funny for the audience. Go through your life and research. Dig up what was painful for you. The next tip is Use personal experiences that you have every day. Recently, I went to the doctor. I have this ringing, this noise in my ear. I went to my doctor and he said it was tinnitus. He referred me to a specialist, ear, nose, and throat specialist. I went to the ENT and he said, yeah, it's tinnitus. He referred me to an audiologist. The audiologist gave me a hearing test and my hearing was fine, except I couldn't hear the canine, the real high pitches. But she said, you know what? It's not tinnitus after all. What you have, that noise that you hear in your head, that's the sound of your wife, and it's got to be surgically removed from your head. Now, that didn't happen realistically, but take events that happen to you, real events, find ways that you can modify it, that you can adapt it, and put it into speech. As a biracial person, back in the 60s, the government said that if you were 1/15 Black, you were considered Black, which means if you were having a house party and you had 14 white people there, they could listen to Kenny Rogers. If one Black person showed up, they had to change the music and put on the funk because now it's a Black party. So I came up as biracial and a whole lot of issues that I had to deal with. I can find issues in there that I can make funny. Now, another thing is use props. I used to start out my speech with a little icebreaker, just a housekeeping issue. We found this in the restroom and we don't know who it belongs to. Does anyone own this? It's a prop. I carry it around with me. Never know I'm going to need it. Now, my wife, she's a medical professional and she has a calming voice. She has good bedside manner. So when she comes home from work, she'll want to talk. And of course, being a good husband, I have to listen. So I sit there and listen. But invariably what happens, because her voice is so soothing, I start to nod off. I start to fall asleep. I found a solution. What I do now is when she starts talking, I reach in my pocket. Without her knowing, I slip these on. I can sit there for hours now and she never knows that I'm asleep. It's perfect. Use props. However you can use them, find ways to put them in your speech. My next tip is find your funny. Be unique. You may try to imitate another comedian, but what I recommend is find a comedian that you love and one that you think fits your personality. Study them on YouTube. Study their delivery. Study how they tell the punchlines, their facial gestures, body language, all those things. That's the delivery. You want to study that. Watch how they pause right before the punchline. Learn all of that and adapt it to your funny. Because you want to be unique. You don't want to get up and try to be somebody else, but be yourself. Be unique. I call that your unique quotient. Not your intelligence quotient, but your unique quotient. Is there a difference between funny and silly? What do you think? Is there a difference between funny and silly? Of course. We all know silly. We've seen people that were silly. And they're annoying. They're obnoxious. They do something that annoys you and then they laugh. That's not humor. That's just silly. So we don't want to be silly. We want to do something that's humorous, bring humor into our speech, and something that both people can benefit from. If only one person benefits, then they're a victim. But make it mutual where everybody can enjoy it. That's funny. Make yourself, not the audience, the butt of the jokes. I've seen comedians, you know, and now if you're getting paid $50,000, $60,000, 100,000, 300, whatever these guys get, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be funny, they can talk about who they want. But as Toastmasters, we're not going to talk about the audience and make them the subject or the butt end of your joke, but make yourself, not the audience, the butt end of your joke. The other day, I told my wife, you know, I got on the scale and I told her I lost 10 pounds. She said, look behind you, I think you'll find it. Talk about the butt end, that's me, you know. What if I pointed someone out in the audience that was maybe heavy and said that about them? You know, they're gonna feel embarrassed, they're gonna feel awkward, so you don't wanna do that. Make yourself the butt of the joke. People will look at you and they'll say, oh, you know, I feel sorry for him. A psychologist, Patricia Keith Spiegel, she has identified that superiority is one of the primary reasons that we laugh. Superiority is the actual reason that audiences laugh when a speaker makes a self-deprecating joke. The audience feels superior to the speaker. While you're laughing, you say, oh, that poor schmuck, that poor guy. But I don't mind. I don't mind being the butt of the joke because at the end of the day, I'm going to get that white envelope, which has a check in it that's not going to bounce, hopefully. So I'll be the butt of the joke all day long as I get paid at the end. One thing you want to find also, my next tip is commonality. Find things that you have in common with the audience. You remember when you were laughing at somebody or something, a comedian, and you look at your neighbor and you say, man, the same thing happened to me. So find things that you have in common with that group. Whatever the group is, you do your research and find things that you might have in common with them because that's a way to relate to the audience. And they've been through the same thing. They can laugh at it, you're laughing at it. It's going to be funny. One thing nowadays that it's gotten to be tough is sensitivity. Nowadays, we have to be real PC, politically correct. It's getting more and more difficult to use humor because you have to be so careful. I think that we just need to relax and learn to laugh. You know, if we can laugh at life, we'll be a lot happier. Don't take life too seriously because you're never going to get out of it alive anyway. So just relax. Humor for me is a way to escape reality. Every subject can be laughed at. You know what? I found out crying at a funeral does not help the deceased. Being sad about any situation does not help the situation. I try to laugh all the time because it's good medicine and it makes you healthier to laugh. I remember years ago, I used to be able to do this at work. If you saw somebody that maybe had a nice outfit on, you used to be able to compliment them. Say, man, that's a nice dress you have on. Oh, I like what you did with your hair. Nowadays, people are so touchy. What I do now is, oh, I like the way you comb your hair. That looks really good. That's nice perfume that you're wearing. Can I have a free pass to Human Resources, please? Because I know it's coming. Just go ahead, give me a free pass to HR. Oh, I love those shoes. Can you give me a free pass to HR, please? Hey girl, you're looking good today. And by the way, can you give me a free pass to HR? It's coming, so just be ready for it. Sensitivity. So within those parameters, create your humor, but remember, be sensitive. I did a speech in a Toastmasters club the other day, and part of it was a gag. I had a black eye. I had sunglasses on, and at the end of the speech, I took the sunglasses on, and I had a black eye, and I was inferring that my wife had hit me in the eye. And somebody brought out how I have to be careful because domestic violence, somebody might have been through that. And like, oh my gosh, that's true. But you know what? I apologize, but I'm gonna get a joke in. Anyway, be literal. think of things that are literal. Sometimes there's meanings to words that are not literal. I have a cartoon brain, and so I think of things literally. Like, think of how a little kid would think of things. If a little kid heard something, like, well, that guy got his butt handed to him. What does that mean? Did it drop on the floor and somebody came along, picked it up, and handed him his butt? How can you do that? How can someone get that? Was it dragging so far down that somebody had to pick it up and hand it to him? He got his butt handed to him. Be literal. Things that are not meant to be literal, sometimes a literal meaning can be super funny. Another technique is called callback. Something that was funny earlier in the program, it got a laugh then, bring it back up. You'll get a laugh out of it then. Now, I wrote something down that Cherie Thomas said, and she said someone sent her a video and she couldn't figure out how to get it up. Go ahead, give me my free pass to HR because I'm putting that bag in my pocket. It's the wrong audience for that. But that would be a great joke for the right audience. She couldn't figure out how to get it up. It's called callback. If you find something early in the program, go ahead, bring it up, use it again, get another laugh. All you're trying to do is get some humor. My next tip, dissect your speech and find points where you can put what I call laugh points in your speech. Tear that thing apart, scrutinize it, and use your imagination and see if you can add something there that might be funny. Look for surprises and twists. I call this the Roadrunner. You remember how Wile E. Coyote used to chase the Roadrunner, and then the Roadrunner would all of a sudden stop at the edge of the cliff, and Wile E. Coyote would just go straight over. He couldn't stop. Or the Roadrunner would immediately turn real sharp to the right, and Wile E. Coyote would keep going straight. Give your audience surprises and twists that they don't see coming. Lead them along in the normal sense of things, and then twist it. Here's a good example. You've heard the phrase, opinions are like flatulence. Everybody has some, but sometimes it's good to keep it to yourself. Now you see how I said that opinions are like, you probably filled in the blank. I didn't say it, but you probably filled in the blank. Opinions are like, and then I added a twist to it. So it's a surprise that the audience doesn't see coming, a little twist. I could never use the material that Chris Rock or Eddie Murphy uses. I just don't use that language. A lot of people find it funny, but I can get close, especially in an audience like this. Folks, shut the phone off. Now, see, I bet you filled in the blank before I even got there. Shut the phone off. No, I mean, really, turn your phones off on silent so that they won't disrupt the meeting. That's a little twist, a little change of direction. How about this one? Yeah, he's full of shaving cream. Ah, you filled in the blank, didn't you? I didn't say it. I know Michelle's gonna ding me, but no, I got witnesses here. I did not say it. Full of shaving cream. And you notice how I pause right before I twist it? Give that little pause. I remember when I was in high school, and to preface this, I'll tell you, in high school, I wrestled a 95-pound weight class. Soaking wet, 95 pounds. I'm driving down the street, and the driver behind me was on my tailgate. And you know what you do, you slow down. So he pulled around me and he cussed me out and then pulled ahead of me. So I honked at him and I told him, pull over, pull over. So we came up to an intersection. He turned right and pulled over, parked right at the edge of the intersection. I got to the intersection, I looked, I saw him parked. I punched the pedal, went straight ahead. I pulled that Roadrunner on him, gave him a twist. Come on, 95 pounds, I'm not looking for no kind of trouble. But I felt good doing it. When you dissect your speech, look for homonyms. Homonyms. Should I? You know, give me a free pass to HR. No, I'm not touching that one. Homonyms are words that have a double meaning. So find words that have a double meaning, exaggerations, and use the second meaning. Explain the double meaning. That's a real good twist. Michelle Washington, she's the mistress of ceremony. Now, I'm not saying she's my mistress, but I'm not saying she's anybody's mistress. I'm not saying she's a mistress at all. Anyway, that's an example of a double meaning. Find words that you can change the meaning of and use that double meaning. Contrast and play on words. Sometimes I'll close out my speech, like I said earlier, folks, I gotta bounce. Unlike that check that I'm gonna get. Right, Miss Michelle? That $50,000 check I'm gonna get, that's not gonna bounce. So use double meanings and contrast. Just be real creative with words that you can change the meaning of and use other meanings. Find the frustrations of your audience. You've done the research. You know what these people have been through. Find some frustrations. Like if you're talking to a techie group, what are the frustrations they might have been through? Somebody tell me in the chat, what frustrations do you think techies go through? Viruses, right? Yeah. Techies experience viruses, and that's a big challenge that they have. Now, how about that group that I spoke to earlier, naturist group or nudists? What challenges do you think they have? Viruses, STDs, sunburn. That's a good one. Sunburn. Think of challenges that your audience may have, frustrations that they may be experiencing. Make a list of them. And then use what I call redefinition. Take that list of struggles or challenges and fill in the blank. What you call blank, I call blank. The first blank is the frustration, and then you redefine that frustration and give that as your joke. Here's a good example. I saw an African comedian, and he said, what you call a day at the gym, I call walking to work. That's a redefinition. It takes one meaning and changes it to another meaning. Now, that joke right there, I belong to a group that we meet in the middle of the day, and they're all DTMs. It's a group we just get together to help each other out. And they're real, you know, snooty tooty. They're all DTMs. I'm the only nobody in the group. But I use that group to bounce things off of their heads. Their heads are real bouncy, so it works great. Something about DTMs, I don't know. But there's a DTM in there named Mo Haji. Now, Mo says he's African, but if Haji is not Indian, there's not a cow in Texas. But he says he's African. So we had another member who, and they told me not to use their name, so I'm not going to use their name, but the group was put together by CCS Butte. You guys know CCS Butte? How hard is it not to make fun of her name? But I love her and I respect her, so I will leave her alone. But she's a two-time DTM with no dispute. Anyway, Andrea mentioned Johnson. Now, she's a DTM also, which CC helped to become a DTM. Andrea mentioned Johnson. It's a hyphenated name. she told me not to use her name, but her name says to mention her name. Andrea mentioned Johnson. I can't but mention it. Now, if she told me her middle name, I'd mention her middle name. But anyway, I'm not mentioning her name. She was giving a speech, and she was talking about how in Africa, how they chase chickens. Well, Mohaji, our resident African, he said, when he was doing the evaluation, he said, we don't chase chickens in Africa. You know, we're civilized. We eat steak and things like that. Well, with my cartoon brain, I'm thinking, of course you don't chase chickens in Africa, because in Africa, chickens are 9 feet tall. They chase you. So find ways to redefine things, create other meanings, and change it up. Mo Haji, I like to get on it because he gave a speech one time and he said that he was a French chef. I'm like, okay, he's from Africa. He was a French chef. Another speech he gave, he said he owned a travel agency with like a gazillion employees. And get this, he sold it right before 9/11. Who has the insight to sell a travel agency right before 9/11? Somebody that knows God. Now, Mo is tall. He's over 6 feet, so he's closer to God than anybody I know. But no, I can't believe he had that kind of insight to sell a travel agency right before. Then he gave another speech and told how he's from DC. And I'm like, okay, that's why he says he's African. DC's a freaking jungle. So he comes out of the jungle of DC and he claims to be an African. Anyway, but what I do is find words and statements that are stereotypes. Stereotypes can be funny if you redefine it. Any Italians in the house? There's a stereotype that I use, I've heard, is that Italians talk with their hands. Cubans do it too. Any Cubans in the house? Yeah. Cubans talk with their hands, and Italians talk with their hands. If there's a knife in their hand, you got to get away from them because they use their hands so much when they talk. You know, I think that's why they could never get any information out of the mafia, because they had them handcuffed. If they had just taken the cuffs off, they would have sung like a canary. Now, I want to find out from the audience how many sticking points, challenges. Give me some examples of some challenges that you had. And you know, you can go ahead and unmute your mic so that I can hear it because I can't see the chat. Challenges in your life that may have been painful at the time that you can now look back at and laugh. Somebody give me one.
Being bullied.
Okay, being bullied. That's a good one. Now, you can use that and find ways. I remember, what was it, Richard Pryor, he said he was bullied his whole life, and he found out that to make people laugh would stop them from bullying him. And he told a story one time. You remember when he got his face caught on fire? He was snorting coke or freebasing or something, doing some kind of drugs, and his mustache caught on fire and it burned his whole face. He told how he had died and went to heaven, and God told Gabriel, he said, hey, I thought I told you to keep Richard safe. And Richard and Gabriel said, well, I tried to, but when his face caught fire, he started running so fast I couldn't keep up with him. Find places, areas of pain, being bullied. Now, what can we do with that? Who has an example of what we can do with that? I make up stories. One thing I learned from DTM Marcia Sims, she said, never let the truth get in the way of a good speech. So I was kidnapped and I was thrown in the backseat of the car. 3 guys, one of them was in the backseat with me, and he put a knife to my throat. And when I tell the story, I always say, it's a good thing it were 3 of them and they had a knife. I had just graduated high school, maybe 96 pounds. No way I'm going to do anything. But I can fabricate. So it's a good thing it were 3 of them and they had a knife. You can always make something up. So if someone bullies you, then you can always talk about how, what, you learned martial arts? You met him after school? You can find a way to take whatever happens to you in the past, find a way to twist it and add it to your speech. Now, once you get the speech written, practice, practice, practice. Take that speech and give it in front of a mirror. Stand there and you can watch and observe yourself. You can observe your body language, your facial expressions. All of that is part of your delivery. Make faces, make your voice inflection, your voice gets higher, your voice gets lower. All these things are important. Now, personally, I don't use a mirror because I'm so damn fine. I tried it one day. I stood there for hours staring at myself, totally forgot what I was supposed to be doing. So, but if you can use a mirror, you know, for average people, use a mirror. Maximize the space that we're now in. This square that we're talking in, this little box. When you're using that space, learn how to maximize the space. Record yourself. And I recommend record yourself on Zoom, because then you can see the box that you're in. If your hands go off screen, they can't see what you're doing with your hands. And if that's part of the joke, they're going to miss the joke. So you have to observe yourself. Like right now, I'm giving you guys the finger. And you can't even tell it. Of course, I wouldn't do that. I love you guys. But keep your body language inside the box. But amplify it, over amplify it. Become a cartoon. Cartoons aren't funny anymore, but they used to be. When I was a kid, they were funny. They were hilarious. So practice, use a mirror, and record yourself. Then take that recording, watch the recording, observe how you deliver and how you use pauses, how you use the punchlines. And if there's anything you can change, go ahead, change it and record it again. Do it over and over again until you get it just right. Now, once you get it right, are you ready for the stage? No, not yet. Try it on some test groups. If you can find groups of empathetic or sympathetic people, friends, hopefully, ask them to let you give that speech in front of them. And ask them for honest feedback. I'm sure as many of you, I belong to 2 Toastmaster groups, and that one group during the middle of the day I call GOK, group of knuckleheads, DTMs. And I'll try my speeches out on one club, then I'll go to another club, try it out there after I changed it, modified it, and then I'll take it before the group of knuckleheads because they're the most critical. I mean, there's one DTM in there. I told her I wouldn't use her name, but DTM Marcia Sims, she will hand you your behind. I mean, literally hand you your behind. But on the other end of the spectrum, when you're good, she will tell you that you're good. And that's what you want, honest feedback. How many times, has anybody seen Star Search, American Idol, those kind of shows? Yeah, I wonder when I see those shows, who let this person get here on national TV and make a fool of themselves? Somebody told them that they could sing. They didn't have any real friends. So find some people to give you honest evaluations. You don't want them lying to you because this speech is important to you. If you're doing it professionally, you're going to get paid. And if it's good, you'll get hired back again. And that's what you want. But remember one thing, evaluations are just opinions. And opinions are like donut holes. opinions, that's just their opinion. So if you feel strong about something, and that's why I say use more than one group, use as many groups as you can as a test audience, because somebody may give you a serious evaluation, but then everybody else loves it. And that's what I find. Other groups love it and one group doesn't. Let me tell you something. If you have an audience and you can appeal to 50% of them, if you can make 50% of them laugh, laughing is contagious. The other 50% are going to start laughing too, just because everybody else is laughing and they don't want to feel awkward. So they're going to laugh too. So don't worry about pleasing everybody. I was told by my group of knuckleheads, one evaluation, they told me, Tapper, you need to keep your humorous speeches separate. Keep your humor in your humorous speech, and your serious speeches should be serious. I was like, what? Moi? To Mo Haji, moi means we in French. I know you were a French chef, but I'm like, me? You want me to keep my humor in humorous speeches and serious speeches? No, every speech should have humor. In my opinion, every speech should have humor. No subject is off limits. None. A friend of mine died about a year ago. Now, we grew up together. We were so tight from kindergarten, all three of us. We've known each other. And when Henry died a year ago, George called me and said, hey, Tapper, are you going to Henry's funeral? I said, nope. He said, why not? I said, well, he's not coming to mine, so I'm not going to his. No subject is off limits. We gotta laugh, folks. We gotta be able to laugh at everything. So remember, evaluations are just opinions. And put humor in every speech that you can. Compare the feedback from the different groups and come out with an average. What you feel strongly about, because it's yours. You know, this is your funny, it's your speech. Take the opinions, consider them. If you get it from everybody or more than one, you might want to change that, but it's your speech. And if you felt it was funny, use it. I cut some stuff out of this speech because one of the knuckleheads in the group of knuckleheads said that, you know, I don't find flatulence funny. Well, I do. But I cut it out of the speech because I'm a new Toastmaster and I had to depend on the more experienced Toastmasters and, you know, maybe a little older. And at that point, flatulence becomes a way of life. And so it's not funny anymore. So I didn't mention the word flatulence. Did I say that out loud? Yeah. Anyway, let's recap. Know your audience and know their frustrations. Study them and find out what is it that you might have in common. What frustration you have in common with them, because pain is funny after the fact. It is when it's somebody else's pain. It's not funny to you when it's your pain, but it's somebody else's pain, that's funny. So know your audience and their frustrations. Keep a journal. Use your phone or whatever. You have to have it on you all the time. If it's a little black book, whatever it is. Have you ever seen, I see it done all the time. Have you ever seen a comedian on stage and they have a little piece of paper in their hand and a pen and they're doing checks? They're trying out new jokes. And if it doesn't work, they draw a line through it. If it does work, put a check by it. They're trying out new material all the time. So keep a journal and write that stuff down. Always have it with you. Look in your past for pain that you can now laugh at. Make yourself, not the audience, the butt of the joke. I feel superior to you if you make yourself the butt of the joke. And I can laugh, oh, that poor fool, ha, ha, ha. That poor Sepp, what an idiot. You know, when you look at Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges, they're just really making themselves the butt of the joke, and we can laugh at that. They look stupid. Be original. Find your unique quotient. What's unique about you and your sense of humor? Some of you guys, I know a lot of you guys remember Bob Newhart. Anybody remember Bob Newhart? Bob Newhart had such a dry sense of humor. He would tell jokes with such a straight face, and he was hilarious. That was his style. He couldn't be anybody else. He could just be Bob Newhart. So whatever your style is, work on that. Deliver that. Don't try to be somebody else. Be original.
That is something I wanted to ask, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you
Yes.
need to be able to identify your brand of humor?
Yes,
Okay.
you should be. You should be able to.
Difficult.
Say again, please.
It's more difficult to do, to identify what your brand of humor is, at least to me.
Okay. Have you ever said something that was funny to somebody and they laughed?
Yes.
Go back to that point and look at everything about it. What you were doing, how you were standing, how you said it, how you delivered it, and work on that. If you did it once, I know you did it again. That's your funny. Find your funny by researching what you've done in the past, because you did it without trying. I got hired one time to be a stand-up comic, and I bombed because I'm not funny when I try to be funny. It's just who I am. And when I tried, it was horrible. But that was before I heard my speech. Now I can do it. So find your funny. Study your speech, find laugh points. Practice your delivery, your pausing, and punchlines. That pause always comes right before the punchline. Change your voice inflection for the punchline, because you want to pronounce that so that they can know that that's the punchline and it's separate from everything else. Try it out in front of test groups. So hopefully you will never tell a joke on stage again without being rewarded with laughter. I'm going to post the link in afterwards in the chat that is a link to my YouTube page. I want you guys to go on there, click on that link, and I want you to subscribe, because this video I'm going to put on there. And I have another video. This was not about speech making, speech writing, but humorous speech. So I have a video on there, how to make an effective speech. And really, you have to have an effective speech before you have a humorous speech, because you're going to take your effective speech and doctor it up, add humor to it. So you want to start out, it's like you're making anything. You start out with a good base, everything else is going to be delicious.
Now that's something I can identify with. I don't do jokes. I can't do jokes for some peculiar reason. They don't come out. But I can find humor in a situation, or humor in a story, or humor that I can then work out. But I'm new at it, and my confidence level is definitely not that high. I am still practicing, still learning how to give more of that.
Yeah. Well, it's just like riding a bike or anything else. You do have to practice. Some people it comes natural to, but anybody can be funny. Anybody can learn how to be funny. There's YouTube videos, there's books, everything. Do research, but just find where you were funny in the past and work on that. Use that.
Thank you. That is helpful. I will do.
And remember that there's going to be some people, I see Pauline Esty, that don't get your jokes. She's in that group of knuckleheads and she's always critiquing my jokes. She doesn't get it. And I'm like, everybody else is laughing, rolling on the floor, across the aisle, and I just don't get it. So remember, there's going to be people like that.
My husband has a completely different sense of humor than I do. I laugh at everything. He doesn't. He's much more serious. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like people like you, and there's, in our group, Deborah Brown. I'd like to have an audience full of people like you so I could do stand-up. Man, I would feel so good. They laugh at anything.
Thank you. That is very helpful.
Any other comments or questions?
I have a question for you. Yes, laugh is contagious, as you said. How do you manage that using Zoom when Zoom is mute?
When Zoom is muted. Okay, that's a good question.